to move on, we have a fairly major topic, actually. The Community Council is turning out better and better as time goes on because we are seeing more developer engagement. And while a lot of it's been very focused on top-level design, game systems, things like that, there is an excellent post in the Community Council that we want to put a spotlight on because it does a great job of basically saying these are two expansions that were a bit out of left field, a bit new. One of them ended up feeling better than the other.
Yeah.
Why?
Yeah.
Which you could maybe also characterize as, why does Shadowlands feel so bad in the way that it does?
Yeah, how Blizzard did you get people to like China, but you couldn't get them to like being dead? That doesn't quite work too well, but you know what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, because when you think of like Warcraft 3, and I suppose there's a decent bit of Japan in the Night Elves, and like some of their like especially their architecture and stuff.
A little bit, yeah.
But you know, just being like, hey, now it's like China, there's a massive bamboo forest. You're like, what? I was in the Barrens in Westfall. What? This is it was pretty new and different. Whereas like the Shadowlands is like, okay, we're going to the realm of death, but like that's something that can happen in a fantasy world, I suppose.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a funny situation. And basically this Community Council post is breaking down why these things ended up feeling different in the way that they did. And it's very important to go into this. Now, we don't go fully into details because that would legit take us all night.
Yep.
So, patch 9.0 introduced us to pretty much a new, fresh setting within the larger Warcraft universe. In this vein, Mists of Pandaria was the same. And they continue. In terms of aesthetics, Pandaria was the riskier move. Shadowlands builds upon the familiar visuals of Icecrown Citadel architecture or the Halls of Valor reimagined in Bastion. But Pandaria, obviously, Warcraft rarely tackled Asian-inspired cultures, and never to that extent. The expansion got severe backlash during the announcement because players didn't understand how it could fit into the Warcraft universe. Mere months after the release, the era shifted, and by the time of 5.2 and the Thunder King Lei Shen, Pandaria was largely accepted. Right now, it remains one of the most beloved expansions. Both expansions introduce players to completely new settings within Warcraft. Logically, both face the same dilemma. New continents had to be connected to the larger world of Warcraft. They had to feel like they belonged there, that they weren't just thrown in from a random evening D&D session. But the approach is very different. Mists of Pandaria. Everything new is a local branch of something old and familiar. Shadowlands. Everything new is actually the source of things you thought you knew. And now we go into the proper breakdown of this.
Yeah.
What's the big deal? What's the issue with this formula beyond the Shadowlands introducing its concepts as the original prototypes of the things we knew? Beyond invalidation of the older lore, I'd say, at the very least, a significant diminishing of our experience of that lore, therefore our like emotional connection to the heart of the Warcraft experience.
Yeah.
It's that we don't know how many previously obvious things work now. What's the role of the Emerald Dream in the Wild God's resurrection? How did the Nerubians adopt Maldraxian architecture? And what source inspired the Scourge the most?
Don't know, mate.
How did the Nathrezim outplay Sargeras and Kil'jaeden?
Big brain.
What exactly was Kil'jaeden's role in creating the Lich King?
Duped by the Dreadlord.
Are the spirit healer Valkyr who broke free from Helya even remotely canon now?
Yes, with a big asterisk. But that's the thing. My responses are jokes here, but they're all very vague. They're all like, we don't know any details. We don't actually. These are all questions that are completely valid. Could have been addressed and haven't been.
Yeah, and that just all means that your knowledge of some event that had happened a couple of expansions ago has little value because the truth of the event can be changed on a whim, even when a retcon isn't required to tell the new particular story. Obviously, retcons and Warcraft have always been best friends, but Shadowlands especially created the feeling that only the events of the most up-to-date patch are actually set in stone. And here's the thing. We brought up Sylvanas earlier. Think of all the Horde players who were really excited to see Sylvanas be back in Legion. And then they saw her, take over from Vol'jin in the way that happened. They're actually hyped and excited for this character. She still is the Banshee Queen that they know, but okay, things are changing. This is getting interesting.
It's a very new war chief.
And actually, none of that was really what we thought it was.
Yeah, none of it mattered.
None of it mattered. None of it was what it was at face value. There was the rug was pulled out.
Yeah, the points are all made up.
Yeah, that's it. You get invested in all of these aspects of the lore. You get invested in the times, like, oh, wow, look at the times. And they're like, oh, wait, it's all just 3D printed pantheons and the Zareth installations spread across the cosmic forces of the universe like Halo rings, probably with an arc somewhere. And obviously people's attachment to the old things will feel diminished then. So, it doesn't even need to be a retcon. It can be a new explanation of the thing you knew that actually diminishes it quite a lot, such that it's an emotional retcon. And I know that some people could say, oh, you're just changing the goalposts to be angry at Blizzard, but ultimately we have to deal with why people feel disconnected from the game right now, and I think that's a large part of why.
Damn right.
Fear for the future. Let me share one little fear of mine. If Shadowlands is the new trend, the potential Dragon Isles expansion could be about a great struggle against some unknown dragon god, Galakrond, who molded Galakrond into a monstrosity and manipulated N'Zoth to corrupt Deathwing. The expansion after that, the Fallen First One, not Amon.
I'm going to be sick.
Of course, you have to think about Amon in Hearthstorm. Well, just in StarCraft 2.
Yeah.
The way that they handled the StarCraft 2 story, which, some things worked for the characters, but the actual plot and world was just
made up.
Yeah.
Yep.
Meaning, I'm afraid of more cosmic villains like the Jailer who lack any non-artificial connections to the previously established narrative. Yeah, well, again, that does come back to the thing where, there's one or two things I think I know about the Jailer that I can't 100% million percent confirm, but are very fucking funny when you think about how the Jailer turned out.
Yep.
And how WoW developers, when they are doing interviews, are definitely going over their media train talking points because this was not all planned to be like this, I think. Anyway, as to why this is important from this post. This is a very fair question some of you might have. The lore isn't important to many players, and there's nothing wrong with it. But both lore and story create a level of immersion for the player, and with the simplest tweak, Shadowlands could have been way easier to immerse oneself into. Yep, you didn't need to have a complete understanding of all of the Warcraft lore to feel cozy in the Barrens. Or, whatever thing it was for the more nostalgic aspects of WoW. And to go into their conclusion, continuity is no longer and needs to change. In a previous thread, I talked at length about an unreliable narrator storytelling tool, about how Warcraft fans slowly lose suspension of disbelief. This thread, at its core, follows the same issue. Continuity is no longer a part of Warcraft's lore equation. If there's no continuity, a player's knowledge in the lore has no value. If their knowledge lacks value, why should they follow the story? Anything in it can be changed in the blink of an eye. And that's the thing where feeling invested in the lore, it's almost as if they started writing for the sake of speculation videos. I'm not saying that's what they did, but that is certainly how it feels.
Yeah.
It's always what's the meaning behind this thing? And I mean, a part of that, our characters are so stupid.
Oh, they're brutal.
Like, it was funny that one of the top comments in the survival guide was like, no, we handed that sigil to the Jailer, basically.
Yeah.
And just all the stupid things the player characters do that kind of rip us out of the experience.
Yeah, contrived reasons to make the plot work.
Like, sometimes the Warrior of Light doesn't do the most intelligent things, but, not a bumbling oaf.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. Like, one of the things that they get really, really right in FF14 storytelling is that, like, every character is relatively intelligent.
Yeah.
Every character does things for purpose. They understand everything going forward. And that's what a lot of conversations are, is like NPCs talking about what something means, what something's going to be, how things are going to progress from there, what the implications of actions are, plotting different actions and seeing what the implications of each of them could be. All this stuff that's like, yeah, these are all intelligent actors that feel like characters as opposed to, pieces been moved around the board willy-nilly. and sometimes been kicked over by a retcon, stuff like that.
Yeah, yeah, and like, I mean, it also doesn't help that, I mean, in the new patch, the characters who feel like people are the robots, like the brokers.
Yeah.
They have got like just, you know, they just feel more fun.
Yeah.
And you look at the human characters, or not, you know, our crew, I suppose. Yeah. And everyone talks. It's so funny because you could say that FF14 would run risk of being so much more stiff because of characters like Urianger and how he talks. Mm-hmm. So even though they are using a very different style of language, they definitely come off more naturally, come off more like people. It might be jarring, maybe especially to people who haven't encountered, you know, things that stray too far away from modern English, as an example. But they end up feeling like more rich, realized characters. Whereas in WoW, yes, people speak in very plain and easy to understand English, but it's so fucking stiff, man.
Yeah.
Even the voice acting gets... Like, the voice acting, they're obviously putting emotion in and trying, but it's just the script they have is so stiff.
Yeah, there's like nothing to distinguish how characters speak or anything. There's a little bit of it, but there's not really a whole pile memorable. Like, it's like, who's Jaina? What is Jaina as a character? What are Jaina's character traits?
I mean, more recently, as I've experienced her in the game, she's just some sort of figurehead character who, you know, speaks very importantly. But and she also talked about you know, me and other Maw Walkers, which was very confusing. And she also doesn't remember my name, and she's not written as if her and my character actually have any form of history with each other. Meaning, even who the fuck is Jaina to me? Nobody.
Yeah.
Like, I care about characters introduced. Like, new characters introduced into Endwalker more than I care about Jaina now.
Yeah.
Because, like, those characters in Endwalker, they're written as if my character actually knows them, and there is, like, a connection, whereas, I mean, they're going to put all the emotion into writing, oh, it's Jaina and her mum, it's Jaina and Thros. But whereas, like, Jaina and the player, this person who has been with her through... so many key elements in her life.
Yeah. Do you remember what we did for Jaina in BFA?
We rescued her from Thros.
Yeah.
She got in jail, you know, with her.
And Thros was, you know, it was this horrible emotional experience that brought it back to her past and had her dealing with the death of her father and all that stuff.
Oh, and we helped her through that.
That she had a hand in doing that because of the decisions she made that were ideologically different from her father, but she fully believed in them, and you know, obviously turned out all well and good in the end. And then just doesn't. None of that matters.
Yeah, it's like
there is none of that in anything Jaina has thought or said or done.
Yeah, we're a tool to Jaina.
Yeah, and it's not even just about us, like as. You know, characters relating to her, because that's like at this point I just don't expect them to ever do that, but it's a thing where they're so unwilling to have actual like smaller character thread points because they want everything to be watchable in cinematic form instead of understandable through the game. None of Jaina's character development has landed or stuck or anything. She's just kind of she's just Jaina now. She just does what is Jaina? She's the one who uses the 3 schools of magic in one fight scene because she's really good at magic and teleports and is a magic flying ship. That's what she is. Also, where's the ship? I haven't seen that in a while. Whatever. That seemed like a cool part of her.
That's what we call the rule of cool. As in, like, why build Solid Lore to last? Well, okay, Jaina can just summon a ship. Okay, we'll never use that again.
Yeah, that's the thing. I love rule of cool stuff. I love when things like
oh yeah, way more than I do.
Yeah, why did they put this in this scene? And if the answer is because it's really cool and people will like it, I'm like, fucking right. Like, that ship appearing was pretty cool, but it would have been way cooler if it had been set up and it had been carried forward. But it just none of it was. None of it was just whatever.
Yeah, I just think the very fundamental thing. I'm trying. This would not be a spoiler to FF, but to somebody who hasn't played it, they might think it's a spoiler that would confuse them. But if okay, let's just say me and Alize went through a really traumatic experience.
Yeah.
Right? Or it was a very traumatic experience for her. Something that is akin to Jaina's experience in Thros. Compare how those characters are written after that point.
Oh yeah, there's actual character development there because characters are living things that change and have ideas and stuff like that, as opposed to being rule of cool plot points.
It's basically really simple.
Yeah.
Blizzard are generally awful at narrative design.
Yeah.
Because there's narrative design, which is, there's the writing of the scenes and stuff, but the actual narrative design of thinking like, who is Jaina? How is she going to move through the story? How does that relate to the player? What's the player's relationship with Jaina? How do we write this so that the player like has an experience? And zero thought has been went in. It's basically they are telling their own story for their own gratification. We're along for the ride, and they hope that it is a fun like TV show for us to watch. They're not writing really you as a character. Now, I'm not saying they need to be super prescriptive about who this champion of Azeroth is. But like you can do FFs, which is still light enough touch with enough room for your own headcanon. They don't have to go full, say, like Commander Shepard, where no matter what your first name is, you are Commander Shepard, and that just means there's a few permutations of this character. Or Geralt, Geralt, right? Or Geralt? Why do I feel like it sounds like I'm saying his name wrong, but I think I'm saying it right. You know those times you just lose your marbles. But, you can play him in a few different ways, but that is who he is.
Yeah.
They don't have to do that. They can just have a bit of a thought about why it works in FF and why it's, why it's just so weak.
Yeah, I mean, that's a thing where, what Habu says, characters most seem to just exist to fill roles to advance the plot, not to have actual characterizations. And I think that's what fits into this point of why should they follow the story? Anything in it can be changed in the blink of an eye.
Yeah.
There's no continuity that's what he says. Continuity is no longer. There's no continuity between characters that makes you feel like anything's interesting. Like one of the examples, someone talked about it earlier on. Bane shouts for the Shadowlands.
That's the most absurd fucking thing.
Yeah, like, first of all, right, let's discount all of, well, maybe a little bit of talk later, but let's discount all of how he should see the Shadowlands as a Tauren of all things, who have a culture and religion of ancestor worship. Let's not think about that.
Oh,
let's
they
think
certainly
about,
did.
Yeah, let's think, fucking right. Let's think about his experience from landing in the Maw, from being kidnapped, fired into the Maw. We don't know anything that happened to him in Torghast outside of torture, whatever. We get him out, and he's like, oh, the soul's gone. We'll get his soul back, put it in him. He stands up, he's like, oh, okay. And he just fucking sits down. He doesn't do anything. He doesn't say anything. Nothing matters. Nothing happens to him. He doesn't go off on an adventure to like go to the Ardenweald and see what the ancestor crack's about. He doesn't go to Maldraxxus to like fight some dudes and try to get stronger. He doesn't go to the Carrion to see all the Tauren people lose their memories, which is really tragic but never addressed.
Yep.
He doesn't go to the Vent Theater to think, am I following in the footsteps of my father? I feel like I'm doing things wrong. I have all this guilt of not adding up to this. None of that happens. He sits in the fucking middle of Oribos going, scratching his ass when he stands up. Then, right, he goes, for the Shadowlands, or whatever the fuck it is. I'm obviously not a voice actor, but like, they're so, like, why would he say that? To anyone is like, who cares? Who cares? He hasn't done anything. What's he here for? He's here for a plot reason. There's no character. There's nothing. And they go, well, yeah, Zero interacts with Huln, which is a crime. What you could do for him going, oh, I get to see the ancestor of the Tauren, one of the greatest like storied characters of the High Mountain. What can we learn from your tribe and your trials and tribulations to bring back to the Tauren people for me to be a better leader, to inspire them as you did? No. He did nothing. They didn't have time to make the content, and they don't care. And Baines goes, for the Shadowlands. You're like, why the fuck would he care? He doesn't care.
And that's why
his character doesn't exist.
Bane, that's why Bane and Jaina feel like fucking robots.
Yeah, they don't exist. They didn't do anything.
Yeah, like the most you'll get out of Jaina is, Laura Bailey speaking the words good.
Yeah.
But it's just not fundamentally resonant.
Yeah.
Like after what she's fucking been through in BFA. And I suppose that's the thing. I think that the devs are basically in their own wee world of thinking about their books and their, what's happening with all these characters. And they've completely lost sight of the game they're making and like how it actually feels to players. Yeah. And that's why so much of this lore just feels completely fucked. Yeah. And then there's even like new and potentially exciting characters like sort of Talia, And again, that's a great example.
What's she done?
Talia just found that her dad's the Lich King. He's Mr. Crispy, the Lich King.
Yeah.
And, well, we get like one, stay a while and listen scene. What's Talia doing? Why is she not heavily involved in this? Where's the storylines with her? Where's the plot with her?
If they wanted to
My character, like, I mean, my character was with her as she kind of went through the first arc in her journey.
Yeah.
Where's the story?
Cut.
Where's the fucking lamb sauce? What have they done?
Yeah, well, here's the problem, right? what they could have done with Talia is have an interesting interaction between her and her father, as her father goes through everything that what domination is and what domination was, how that affected him. Maybe provide some context for why Alex Strasza breathed on him and turned him into a big fucking Mr. Crispy Man. You're like, what? None of that has ever been explored.
No.
None of it matters. So if they don't have the resources or the institutional will to give fucking Bolvar Fordragon, literally the fucking box character that they used, if they don't take the character that's on the box and in the cinematic and give them fucking anything, they're not going to give it to his daughter because they forgot to write his fucking story.
But Matt, they told us he'd be like really involved and active in this expansion, unlike Magni.
Yeah, I want Magni back. He was better. He at least fucking spoke.
Yeah, it's like their storytelling is so unforgivably embarrassing in this expansion. And I think they're just thinking about, the Sylvanas book, this novel. It's so beautiful. Oh my God. Listen to Paddy Mattson speak at an Audible, which will be a sponsor soon.
Yeah.
And it's like they're completely lost in this fucking fantasy land, and they've forgotten that they haven't written Mr. Crispy as a character. They haven't written his daughter as a character. Big now apparently is deeply invested for the Shadowlands.
Yeah.
Or like, why does Bane say that? Can we have seen him go through a story, please?
Yeah.
Why is I helped Jaina through her deepest trauma. Why does she treat me like a fucking disposable mercenary?
Yeah. It's...
Why is it that when I get a scene with Thrall and Draka, I'm just sitting there watching them have a conversation?
Yeah. Which doesn't even track that well, but yeah.
Like, at best, we get to observe characters having a good interaction.
Yeah.
And it's like, how is it that in FF14, they are able to get that when also the Warrior of Light is a literally silent protagonist, but you get to choose your dialogue sometimes? It's mad. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Where's Karn?
Yeah, exactly. That's the thing where...
Varian?
Yeah.
They're going to do anything with him and Anduin?
The prospect of them not doing anything with Varian and Anduin, despite Anduin being one of the main characters of the expansion, despite being a main character of BFA, but not really being a main character of BFA, and then being the main character of the Shadowlands instead.
So
I'm very confused.
let's work it out. They've sort of fucked up Jaina. They fucked up Bolvar. They fucked up Talia. They fucked up Bane.
Yeah.
None of the Shadowlands characters are basically interesting. You could maybe say the one thing they've done a wee bit better is the Azara cinematic bit.
Yeah.
And Bon Samdi's fun. They fucked up all of that.
Yeah.
Let's see. They then fucking, I don't know, really cheapened our investment in almost all of the lore that came before Shadowlands, so they did that too. They ruined Kel'Thuzad. I mean, what an embarrassingly terrible way to treat Kel'Thuzad. Ner'zhul, oh boy.
Ner'zhul and Kel'Thuzad are the
oh boy, fucking howdy. Wow.
Yeah.
And it's like they can't undo this shit.
Yeah.
Unless they actually say that we are in a fever dream because of what N'Zoth did. Like,
I'd clap. Like,
I would be, if he had walked out and said, "Gamers, it's time to wake up,"
oh my God,
I would be like, "Yes, we're done. It's over." It's like they've either underwritten or fucked up every character they've tried, and then they've not made good on any of the promise of the Shadowlands, instead portraying a collection or showing us a collection of scenes that track together with some form of logic.
Yeah.
Because I refuse to say that they're telling us a good... they're not telling us something worthy of the name story with this A-plot of Shadowlands.
There are 2 characters in Shadowlands that have anything that could be vaguely considered anything character development or their character being pushed forward that are originally from Azeroth. There are 2 characters. One of them is Sylvanas. No one's happy with how that went. And the other's Garrosh, who wouldn't have been there except for one person going, wouldn't this be cool?
Uther?
Oh, Uther, yeah. That's what I forgot about Uther. Sorry, let me make that 3 then.
Uther
Make that 3.
handled decently enough, actually.
Uther, yeah, I think that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Would have made sense if the Kyrian weren't so shit overall. Because
Well, it's almost as if there was a pretty different fundamental plan, but anyway, we won't get into that.
Yeah, not going to do that. But that's 3 characters. So 3 characters, that's it. None of the other Forsaken, despite this being the Shadowlands. Nothing to do with any of like the historical context for the Tauren or the any. There's no like Vrykul chilling about, despite being like fully human and stuff. There's nothing really interesting happening. The only characters are Garrosh, who was the stroke of luck that actually got good development and carried forward. Uther, but even then, Uther's not a World of Warcraft character. Uther's a Warcraft 3 character.
Yeah.
That's the thing where the only 2 World of Warcraft, if you've been playing World of Warcraft, the only 2 characters are Sylvanas and Garrosh. Everything else is just nothing. And I think I can't remember who it was, but someone pointed out earlier saying it's because they write assuming zero knowledge. Yeah, it's because they design, Caterpark says, it's because they design and write based on the assumption that you're a new character and have no idea how much of the story you played, so every character is reset to 0. And that is just so, like, I understand that as a decision, which means you have to do something different, but, like, they just don't. I refuse to accept that as an excuse because they could do it entirely differently.
Ever heard of Deep Space Nine?
No.
Or like...
I've definitely not heard you talk about Deep Space Nine every day for the past 2 weeks.
Just like a thing, there's shows like that that are accessible just watching an episode.
Yeah.
If you've watched all the episodes, and let's just say you know some of the Odo Kira stuff, then it's going to be way more compelling.
Yeah.
But the episode will still work, and you will get it. Yeah. And turns out, so that's like striking a balance. But if you're always writing a character so that somebody can come to the story fresh at any point, you're never going to write them in a way that will give people a reason to get more invested. Because if you do a good job with the scene and somebody's like, wow, other people like this, and I mean, I'm a bit confused, but fuck, this is probably a good story. Maybe I should pay more attention. You're going to give them a reason to care, and that's the thing. They've continually not given us that reason to care.
Oh man, that's right. I forgot about that. Not only was Devos wasted, but her boss fight released a few weeks before the related time-gated story content.
What a fucking clown tier thing, like.
Oh my goodness. I forgot how weird that was. Oh man.
Yeah. Once again, the old team was nowhere near perfect. Just to go back to the community post.
Yep.
We are in this situation because for them, retcon was always the answer to any problem, even if there were smarter ways to solve the issue. So if the old guard lacked care, I can't expect newer developers to treat the lore as any more sacred. Their attitude, just as an unreliable narrator system, serves as the logical answer to the legacy left by older writers. But even if the roots of the problem have been there for a long time, the fruits of this tree are very fresh and they should be dealt with.
Oh, indeed.
So I thought that community post was a nice exploration.
Oh yeah, I think in terms of
the issue and
in terms of overall being like, if you had to concisely say here are the problems of Shadowlands in how it's done its world building and how it's done its storytelling, I think that's basically the best way you could do it. Like that's the prime resource on the internet for explaining it right there. I think it's concise enough and it explains it away. That's pretty good. So props to the writer for sure.
Yeah, and I hope that they start listening to this shit because they can't have this fucking mess of a lore. Like one more expansion of this quality of writing and just Azeroth is dead. The Warcraft IP's dead. The best we can get is some nice, nostalgic copium in Hearthstone or a classic release.
Yeah, that's what I think is super important to them making a game. And I think this is one of the reasons I want 10.0 to take fucking forever to make. Because World of Warcraft is not a product series like a McDonald's, or a, let's just stay in games, idiot, like a Call of Duty, right? People will play Call of Duty for the gameplay, but Call of Duty's not a world. Call of Duty's not an IP. They've tried a little bit of that with Modern Warfare and the Black Ops stuff, and that's been relatively successful, but they're clearly happy to throw that away, and they know most players care for the gameplay. But then you look over at how Riot are doing things, and they have a problem with dancing with canon, because they rewrite stuff all the time, and they change a couple things, but it's never like, not everything's super hyper connected. For them to change everything with one variable flick, the whole thing changes. It's like small things change, but there is like a world there. There's a world where like, okay, I can understand what's going on here. I feel invested in stuff. Even if canon's changing, I get the point. And there's like the themes and the characters all roughly stay the same. But that's like an IP. There's more context than just the gameplay. But World of Warcraft has been developed since Legion, realistically, especially after Legion had success in gameplay systems, was very much designed to be like a product line, like going for your Big Mac. You go for your Big Mac every day. I wouldn't recommend that.
Yep. Bad move.
That. Unless you're Warren Buffett, then work away. But that idea of...
I know, it's only a Big Mac and the market's up. The market's down. Oh, Warren's... He's having just a quarter pounder, like.
Yeah, well, fair enough. Yeah, so that idea of it's a product line that's just, you consume it every day for that little, there you go. There's no overall investment. And if you're building an IP, you need that overall investment. You need people to care about these characters, because, like, compare after Shadowlands to before. This may be technically unfair because of the difference in how much they've been used, but if there's say they release a World of Warcraft action adventure game, and you play, say it's the third person combat, and you play as Arthas going through his journey, how much more interesting is that to you than the same but for Jaina, or the same but for Thrall, or the same but for Bolvar, or for Cairn or Bane, something like that? Obviously there's some character stuff going on, but Arthas is a character with a journey that you know.
Yeah. And
everyone else just has chops and changes, pieces of whatever the fuck has happened. And you don't really connect the whole dots for the character development. So it's like, what is an action adventure game where you play as Jaina? That would need massive rewrites, and people likely aren't quite as invested, because Jaina is so many different things, whereas Arthas is this one character. I think that's the thing where they need to make sure that investment happens. Because even the way they're doing things, if they... And say, even they released a expansion for Hearthstone, or maybe they, in the hypothetical world there's Warcraft 4, and they release a new race DLC, and the race is the Kyrian. Who gives a fuck? Who's going to buy that versus the Tauren? Obviously, Horde would be... Depends how you look at it, but like, here's the Tauren race for it. Who's going to buy that? Because people were invested in that. But no one's going to buy the Kyrian race. No one's going to buy here's the Pelagos character DLC for the action RPG, or here's the Ember Court Hearthstone expansion. Like, that's the thing. They're not building an IP. They're building a product to be consumed regularly, not an IP, not a world. And I think that's going to catch up to them, and they need to solve that.
They need to get back to doing really good myth making.
Yeah. Yep.
Myth making, not lore explaining, is a humongous difference.